What is up, farmhands? phatbeetz here. Welcome to the beet farm and to my first walkthrough for the first scenario of Frostpunk, A New Home. In this tutorial, I'll break down how I play the first day at the normal difficulty setting. So without further ado, let's get started. The moment you close this message, hit the spacebar to pause the game. You're going to do a couple of things here. 1. You're going to assign your first law. 2. Assign your people to tasks. And 3. Lay out a template for your roads. You can either press L or click on the scales icon to pull up the book of laws. Here you want to enact the emergency shift law. As you can see, this law enables you to force a 24-hour shift for your workers with a substantial rise in discontent as a result. Since this is the case, you don't want to use this often. Now that you've assigned the law, note that there is a cooldown period for when you can enact the next law. The next thing you want to do is assign the 80 workers to gather resources. As you can see here, I assigned 15 workers to the 2 wood crates, the steel wreckage, and the coal pile. I assigned the last 5 workers to the wood crates at the lower right. The goal of assigning the workers to these piles is to gather the resources as quickly as possible before day 4. Now that we've assigned our first law and our workers, we can do some road layouts. While workers can slog through the snowdrifts, they will travel along road networks if they are available and are much more effective at delivering the resources to the stockpile. We're going to plan out the inner ring around the generator since it only supplies warmth to this zone initially. You can access the build panel by pressing B or clicking on the hammer icon. When you select the tent, the green grid outlines appear for your reference. We spaced out 2 tents to mark out the roads. Once we're finished, we can simply cancel the builds and reclaim the resources. After that, we build 3 roads to access each of the resource clusters. Before we start the time, we can check out the state of the city by pressing V or checking our economy by clicking on the pie chart icon at the lower right. We can also have a snapshot of the resources by clicking on stockpiles. As you can see, we only have raw food at the moment. Now that we've completed all the initial steps, we can let the game run for a few seconds so that the groups move for a moment. You can see the immediate impact of the law as the discontent rises a bit. We pause again so that we can select an individual from each resource cluster to immediately begin building the roads that we outlined. I usually select the one in front of the group for each of the clusters. You can click on the workspace and dismiss them from the roster in the Workers tab. You can see that there is a temperature drop indicator in the calendar bar on the HUD. Again, this tutorial will set you up for a strong start so that you are more than ready to deal with that drop. As you can see, I did this for each of the 3 clusters. Generally, the dismissed workers will go and find the first building task that is closest to them. In this case, each one will build the road that is closest to them. You can already see this start to happen. At this point, you can also see that resource collection has begun as the roads are being constructed. There is nothing to do at the moment except wait for the 3 workers to finish road construction. Once they're finished, reassign them to their respective resource piles. Now that the roads are complete, it's time to build the workshop to start research ASAP. What I like to do is to put my workshops away from the housing areas that I am building. You should have enough resources at this point to space out a tent, the road network extending out, a cookhouse, and the first workshop. Cancel the other 2 construction requests once you build the workshop. At this point, you can build a second workshop to check if it fits within the road network. But don't actually build it yet. You will need those resources for tonight. The first workday will end soon, and we'll be building all the initial tents after that. Since you want them to be built as quickly as possible, select the workshop and pause the construction.
Night is coming. Put down your tools.
When the first day ends at 1800 hours, I pause the game to set up what will happen at night. We'll use the emergency shift to keep the coal collection going. However, we need to free up the engineers, so before activating the emergency shift, we'll swap them out with the workers from another resource pile. You can see that the discontent has jumped significantly. It won't last forever though. There are 3 reasons you want to do an emergency shift on the coal pile and not any other resource. 1. It's one of the objectives. 2. The other resources will be depleted in less than 24 hours. 3. Coal is critical for warmth and you can never have enough. We have enough resources at this point to lay out all of the housing, as well as a medical post for anyone who gets sick. You may get a request for housing at this point. We can definitely get everyone housed, so let's select the second option. At 2000 hours, we can turn on the generator for the night. We can get away with only using the generator at night for the first few days. Et voila! We have fulfilled the first requirements. The next thing to deal with is the food supply. We'll address this in the next tutorial. At this point, we'll let the game run as everyone builds the inner ring structures. You can see the number of homeless people drop as each tent is completed. Towards the end of construction, you can continue construction on the workshop. Once the cooldown for the Book of Laws is done, enact the extended shift law. We can now set all resource piles to the extended shift. You'll see the discontent increase with each shift. Now the workshop is completed, free up 5 engineers to assign to it. We don't have enough resources to start research at the moment, but that won't be a problem in the morning. You might have some sick people at this point, so put in at least 1 engineer to the medical post. The more engineers you have there, the faster the patients will recover. At 4 o'clock you can turn off the generator. It takes a few hours for the heat to die down, but it won't matter during the day. Now that we have everything set up for the next workday to start at 6 AM, we can pause here. And there you have it, an in-depth look at how I opened the scenario on day 1. This game is all about timing because you're running against the clock. Just about every action you take has a consequence at some point later in the game. If you like what you see here and you want me to continue on this tutorial series, please give a like to this video. See you next time. This is phatbeetz, signing out.